First of all, before I begin, I want to thank all the veterans for our freedom. Normally, I would devote today's Devar Torah to that, but what's going on in the world today requires a bit of a different focus, a focus that will create even more veterans that we will want to thank later and hopefully very soon. So let's talk about it. First of all, today's Torah reading begins by announcing the death of Sarah at the age of 127 years old. And as I said when describing the Torah reading before, there's a midrash that when Sarah saw Abraham coming back from the mountain where he was sent to sacrifice their son Yitzchak, and he came back without him, she died of a broken heart because she erroneously thought Abraham had gone through with it. Of course, he didn't. She saw one less person coming home and was sure it was Yitzchak who was not there. Instead, of course, it was Eliezer who went to find Yitzchak a bride. So the sages wanted us to learn that we should never let our emotions get the better of us and to stay calm until we have all the facts and, as I just mentioned, the context. Pick and choosing, cherry picking, and all that out of context, and also leaving things out is not how we should make decisions and not how we should live our lives. And the world must learn this lesson. News organizations and social media want to be the first with breaking news. That's how they make money. They're the first. So they run with the most salacious things as soon as they hear them. They never check them. Even if they don't think it's true, it doesn't matter. They run it. Nobody checks the veracity of these things anymore. They used to, but not anymore. They just run with it. This often creates over-the-top reactions that wind up being based on truth, but incomplete and out of context. Something about it is true, but if you listen to it, the whole truth, and in its right context, it's completely wrong. For real-time examples of this, we need look no further than what is reported about Israel and Gaza in the news. Even when the information comes directly from the perspective of Hamas, who ensures that the most important things are either hidden or lied about, everyone runs with it. Once it's out there, people's minds get made up. After that, we put up shields that keep exculpatory or damning facts and context from changing our minds. Don't confuse me with the facts. I already made up my mind. We learn from Sarah, who died of a broken heart based on what she thought she saw with her own eyes. Without complete information and context, perspective can, and often does, prove very deadly. Here's a summary of what the world needs to know about the situation in Israel. Unlike what I did during the past few weeks, I'm going to try very hard to deliver this Devar Torah devoid of my deep-seated anger at those who ignore the truth. Why do Palestinians not have a state? That's a question. The answer? The Jews and the Arabs are fighting over the same piece of land. Why not just divide it into two states? Simple solution. The idea has been proposed several times, namely in 1937, 1947, 2003, and 2008. The British, the United Nations, and the Americans each proposed it at different times. And each time the Israelis said, yes, we are willing to do this compromise, and we will accept these solutions. Every single time. But the Palestinians refused each time. Why? There's only one answer. The Arabs never thought that this was all about the land. Never was for them. So let's go deeper. The Jews and the Arabs appear to be fighting over a piece of land. That's what it looks like. And that's what each party wants us to think. But it's only true for us Jews who are fighting over the homeland that God promised us. While the Arabs claim exactly the same thing, that claim is unsubstantiated by facts and history. You can't find it anywhere. The Arabs are clearly fighting about something else. Hamas and all their friends, including ISIS, Hezbollah, and the Taliban, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the like, are not fighting for that little strip of land the size of New Jersey. That's not what they want. What they're fighting for is to force a complete Muslim world. That's what they want. That's what they say. That's what they claim. And that's what they live for. They have already said they intend to convert Spain and Rome to become Muslim. They also identify the names of London, Paris, Berlin, Manhattan, Tokyo, Delhi, Shanghai, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, Beijing, Mumbai, and the list goes on. They want all of them to be Muslim. But it's even more than that. So why are they so fixated on destroying Eretz Yisrael, that little country that sits into the middle of their huge empire? They truly believe and disseminate the anti-Semitic trope that the Jews control the world by overseeing and directing the power of the United States. They see the Jews as the single greatest checkpoint for Sharia law to be the world's universal way of life. They say this repeatedly. I believe they mean it when they say it. I believe it. Why would they keep saying it all these decades if they didn't believe it and they didn't mean it? I also believe that ignoring them is like how when ostriches stick their head in the sand, they think their predators will leave them alone. More importantly, idealistic thinking does not make anyone morally superior to those who know they have to deal with the truth realistically. I wonder how many of the idealistic youth who were repeatedly gang raped and became hostages by Hamas on October 7th, and there were many, by the way, would disagree with what I just said, which is different today than before. I wonder how many would still say and still stay idealistic. A fact. Here's a fact. A scary fact. Young Muslims are the fastest growing community in the United States and Europe. Whenever I see a Muslim, I ask if they would rather live under the United States style of democracy or Iranian style Sharia law. I ask them point blank. I asked them if it should be illegal to be part of the LGBTQ plus community, and if those who profess to be members of those communities should be jailed, beaten, tortured, put to death, or combinations of those. Really, please just ask and see how they answer you. Idealists will be shaken to the quick by most of their responses. Along these lines, did you ever wonder why there are so many Palestinian refugees in the world? Hundreds of millions of people all over the world have become refugees because of different wars and disasters ever since 1945. A UN agency was set up to help all the refugees. That's not good enough. There's another separate refugee agency created only for Palestinians.
Why?
We have two, one for every refugee in the world, except Palestinians, and one for Palestinians.
Why?
If you are anything like me, you have to be asking why the world needs two agencies, one specifically with the Palestinians and one for the rest. Why? The difference between these agencies is that they have a different set of governing rules. Only the Agency for the Palestinians allows refugee status to be passed on to their sons and grandsons and great-grandsons and so on. In other words, if I'm a refugee, so are my children, so are my grandchildren, and so are my great-grandchildren, and so on. The other agency only supports those that claim to be refugees, not their children, not their grandchildren, not so on forever. It only does the first generation and takes care of them. And that generation takes care of the rest. In that case, the money goes where it's supposed to go. Now, in this special Palestinian-focused agency, and if you don't want to believe me, you don't have to. Just look this stuff up. It's all documented. The UN pours billions of dollars into Gaza. And since Hamas is the government in Gaza, only an idiot would have to believe the money gets to the people. But we're going to get back to that in a minute. Another completely fallacious thing Israel is accused of is ethnic cleansing. The proof that this is nothing but anti-Semitic propaganda is obvious just from the facts. And again, don't believe me, look it up. In 1948, there were 160,000 Israeli Arabs. In 1948, 160,000 people who are Arabs lived within the borders of Israel and accepted Israeli citizenship. 160,000. Today, there are over 2 million. 2 million. In 1967, there were about 1 million Palestinians. Today, there are 4.5 million Palestinians. 1 million in 67 when it began, and now 4.5 million. To be completely honest, I hate to say this, but it was math that almost kept me from graduating school. But even I know that 2 million is much bigger than 160,000. Even I know that. And even I know that 4.5 million is much bigger than 1 million. Even I know that. But what about the number of Jews in neighboring countries? How about them? Lebanon in 1948 had about 6,000 Jews. Today, maybe there's 100. Maybe. I know 100 is less than 6,000. 80 years ago, in Syria, there were more than 30,000 Jews living there. 80 years ago, 30,000 Jews called their home Syria. Today,
100.
None. Zero. Nada.
Really?
And I know zero is a smaller number than 30,000.
Oh my
And in 1940, Egypt, there were 70,000 Jews. Today, you won't believe this, there's only 3 people in all of Egypt who claim they're Jews. 3. That's a lot smaller than 70,000. So yes, there is ethnic cleansing going on in the Middle East. There is. But it's the Muslims who are doing it to the Jews, not the other way around. It is important to add that for the 2 million Arabs living in Israel, they enjoy exactly the same rights as the Jews and everyone else who lives there. They have been elected to be members of Knesset. Is life all perfect for them? Of course not. Nobody can honestly say it is. But if you ask Israeli Arabs where they want to live, in Israel or under any Palestinian rule, the vast majority say Israel. In fact, they all must, because they could easily go and leave and live under Palestinian rule if they choose. Nobody's holding them in Israel. Arabs enjoy more rights and even a higher standard of living than any other Arabs in the world, any other Arabs who live anywhere else in the entire Middle East. Israeli Arabs have a much better standard of living. In fact, did you know? This is something most Jews have no idea. Did you know that an Arab judge in Israel, there was a judge in Israel who was an Arab, he's allowed, was the one who convicted and sent Moshe Katsav, who was the 8th president of the state of Israel, to jail. He was convicted of rape and other things. But it was an Arab judge that convicted him and sent him to jail. Did the mainstream media ever report that? They reported a judge sent him to jail, but they never said he was an Arab. I never saw that, did you? Even the Israeli press only mentioned it in passing. You know why? Because to Israelis, it makes no difference if the judge is a Jew or an Arab or a Druze or a Catholic. They don't care. They only care if it is a judge. The judge who happened to be a citizen of Israel, who was an Arab, ruled that Israeli President Moshe Katsav was a criminal, and so he was sent to jail. He was taken out of office and sent to jail. And guess what? There were no riots, there were no protests, and there was no criticism of the judge or his decision. Justice was being served. Everybody knew it. Period. Another thing that Hamas does not accept or tolerate are the LGBTQ plus community. Even so, we see gaggles of LGBTQ progressives all over the world proudly marching with the Palestinians in pro-Hamas demonstrations. Nobody marched when 500,000 people died in the war in Syria. Nobody demonstrated when Iran murdered girls who refused to cover their hair. Pakistan is about to deport 1.7 million Afghans. Where are the progressives? Why are they so silent in these situations? What is there about Hamas that attracts progressives that none of the other similar situations have been able to do? We all know the answer. The answer is Jews. Do you know what one of the first things Hamas did when it came to power in Gaza? They rounded up gay men, took them to the rooftops of their tallest buildings, and unsuccessfully tried to teach them to fly on their own. They pushed them off the buildings. Lesbians are not welcome either. In fact, can anyone tell me even one progressive ideal that is welcome in Gaza? Any one progressive ideal? Whether you agree with progressives or not, can you tell me one thing that Hamas does that the progressives would agree with? Of course you can't. They don't have any. The media positions Gaza as being the biggest prison camp in the world. This is another lie. Gaza shares its border with Israel and Egypt. Israel has many Gazan people working inside its country. In fact, this is how many of those got in to the country to attack on October 7th. They were allowed in. On the other hand, Israel has absolutely no influence over Gaza's border with Egypt. So how can Gaza be a prison that's run by Israel? How could it be? It's not. More interesting is that Hamas, which was elected in 2007, very clearly states that it wants to destroy Israel. Yet Israel has always provided, maybe they stopped after October 7th for a few days, but they're still doing it again. They've provided water, electricity, and aid to Gaza. Name any country in the whole world, any country, I don't care which one, that provides humanitarian aid to its enemies. Tell me one. Just one. Don't waste your time. You aren't going to find one. How about this? How many of you know that the daughter of the Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was treated in an Israeli hospital when she was sick? How many of you know this? She was very sick. Why was she not treated in a hospital run by Hamas? They have hospitals there, and they're not bad. Why not a hospital in the United States or Europe? Well, let me tell you. Did you know that Hamas is one of the richest terrorist organizations in the world? Did you know that Hania, the president, the head of this Hamas organization, has a net worth of over $4 billion? $4 billion this guy has. He can afford only the best and wanted the best for his daughter. That's why she was in an Israeli hospital. Hania lives in one of the most expensive hotels in the world, located in Qatar. On the other hand, he lets his people wallow in poverty-ridden Gaza, a situation that he created himself. Is it Israel's fault that Hamas was elected by the Gazans and the Gazans get no support from its government? They only steal from the people? No, Gazans were and are responsible for their own situation. The Hamas government takes all the money they're given and they keep it for themselves. And they build things. The reality is they do not choose terror because they are poor. They are poor because they choose terror. As I said before, money has never been a problem. Never. The people of Gaza get more money from the UN, the Arab countries, the European Union, and the United States than any other group. But instead of investing in education and infrastructure, they invest in building tunnels, amassing armament, and rockets that they use to attack Israeli civilians. This, by the way, happens to be a war crime. Knowingly attacking civilians is a war crime. Everybody knows it. The world knows it. But it's amazing how many Americans still march in support of Hamas, the war criminal. In closing, if you forgot or ignore every fact that I presented just now, all you have to do is look at what Israel and Hamas say about themselves. The Israeli Declaration of Independence says, "We extend our hand to all neighboring states and their peoples in an offer of peace and good neighborliness. Israel will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion or race. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture." That's what Israel declares and lives for. What about Hamas? What does it say? Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam obliterates it. Do you see the difference?
A little bit.
This means that there is no solution for the Palestinian problem except by jihad. Jihad is its path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. And that includes not just Jews, anyone who is not following Sharia. So as I said before, this conflict has never been about land, it's never been about money, and God knows the Arabs have plenty of both. From the beginning, this conflict has always been about values. Jihad violence and death versus freedom, equal rights, and peace. And that is why our veterans are so important to us. And the veterans of Israel are also going to be important to them. And all I can say at the end of this is, Am Yisrael Chaye, Am Yisrael Chaye. Shabbat Shalom.